Hello everyone, this is your weather woman meteorologist Amy Meds, and this is Saturday, August 28th. We are looking at two hurricanes right now. There is one in the Pacific Basin named NORA and another in the open warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico named Ida. So both of these are expected to make landfalls on Sunday. Whether or not NORA actually crosses overland completely with its entire eye wall is a little up in the air right now. We could see some passages near Cabo, near the Baja California Sur area, and we could also see some very close calls with Mexico on its Pacific side here. So right now we're looking at 80-mile-per-hour winds at the center. On land, that's more closer to 65 with the hurricane warning in effect right near this area. This is going to also be raining down a lot on Mexico City today, so a very populated area there with high winds and another high tourist area in the southern region of the peninsula of Mexico. So for the Gulf of Mexico, we have very warm waters I'll be looking at. They get warmer and warmer as this gets closer to the coast, which is why we have the rapid intensification forecast, where we see a jump from a hurricane category 1 to a 3 within a 12-hour span. So what that really means with rapid intensification is that we're going to have a sustained wind, that means 1 minute or longer, recorded wind speeds of 30 knot increase within a 24-hour period. So going from knots to miles per hour, that's 35 mile-an-hour difference in the winds, getting stronger within 1 day. So on top of all the warm water and reason for these storms to intensify, we also had space weather. So there is more information about this on my YouTube channel and my Facebook group called Space and Earth Weather if you're interested in learning what the radio blackout here with the R1 level means and what a G1, a geomagnetic storm levels, can mean. So not only are these storms going to be giving us more lightning because of some of this information here, but increased cloud coverage with some of these larger flares is something that's been observed and talked about in some of the newer studies. Now with geomagnetic storms, we also know that we'll have some day and night side all around the globe problems with radio communication. So while we have search efforts underway, there will be more of these flares from more of these sunspots being sent off of the sun and toward Earth. So while people are on the ground trying to do search and rescue along the coastlines here, there could be problems with these people being able to communicate because of that space weather. So lightning, remember, will be increased, as well as the chance for that radio or emergency relief effort being halted. So here, there are not a lot of buoys that actually show the water temperature. This one is 87. Closer to the shore. I wanted to show to you that these water temperatures are higher along the coast, 86.5. We're getting a lot of 87s in this area. Because these are more accurate, we see regular tides there. This gets very science-y here, but the waters are definitely warmer, and I only do that before I like to look at the Reynolds sea surface temperature, because this one ends up getting a little, I guess, kind of drawn together here. It's not as precise, but we can tell in the last feed from our sea surface temperature data that we do have that warm pocket of water that I showed yesterday in my video right here. So this is one of the reasons why we will see a landfall in this area. Hurricanes like to follow the warm water, and it's almost as if this path is leading directly here toward the central to eastern portion of Louisiana's coastline, which is where I believe we will see a landfall. That very close to Yuma we will see the eye wall, but could be a lot closer to New Orleans in my opinion, compared to what the models are showing. And with the European model, I'll just go ahead and play this out before I dig into the other factors that really change the forecast path. So remember that warm water, it is directly there, and then there's another extra warm pocket on this side, another extra warm pocket on the west side. So I do believe that with the water temperatures, there's little bits here that are stronger, not showing up in that Reynolds surface map, where it gets a little bit muddled and mixed together. those buoy datas really did help. So here, the other factor that will steer these hurricanes one way or another is going to be these upper level, or really more technically mid-level winds at the 500 and 600 millibar level. This is a little bit below where planes fly, and once you see that white, we know that those warmer sea surface temperatures are fueling this storm to grow. So I completely believe that this will blow up. The white is more than 100 miles per hour, so that's where we'll see the rapid intensification to a major hurricane, which is labeled anything over Category 3. And this can change a little in different parts of the world with the terms, and is usually based off of major, meaning that a lot of people's homes will not make it through the storm. So this is why evacuations are so important now and not later. Gas is already running out in most of the stations around these parishes. Food is emptying out, and so this is why we are always stressing as meteorologists to go ahead and stock up ahead of time. Make sure you have all that water. Fill up your bathtubs now if you're going to stay behind in any of these regions. Even if you're farther outside of the actual hurricane warning, some of these very strong gusts will still produce power outages hundreds of miles away from the center of rotation. So I'll very closely zoom in on this. I am agreeing more and more with the landfall. I would not be surprised if this eye wall were actually on the eastern side of Yuma, which is here where the cursor is. And so just keep in mind that people may be evacuating as far as Intracoastal City and end up not having any storm surge, but still some random gusts falling on houses would be an issue. So if your home is surrounded by pine trees, those are tap roots, and it's another thing to consider when you're choosing whether or not to evacuate is what's surrounding your home. Are there branches that could fall on the roof and end up falling on top of a bedroom where somebody's sleeping? Because those are the two highest rates of death with these storms, is that people end up in the floodwaters and drift away. And they end up in the storm surge, which would be on the east side of this, where all the fast-moving wind pushes water up onto land while torrential downpours are funneling water toward the coastline. So with that multitude of inundation, people end up getting swept away and homes are ripped off their foundations. So please be careful with these. Now, I want to zoom out and go back to right now because we are still in the mid-level winds, and this is going to show where that high pressure is now. There is a high pressure that is steering this storm for the most part because these winds to the west are they're not really there. It's very just open to accepting the storm to coming in if it were being pushed that way, but this is actually going to start now pushing it more north rather than westward. So I believe this will be north-northwest with its next motions going on here. And sure enough, that's what the storm shows. Now, a little bit later, like I was saying, I do believe we could see a bit of a curve north and then eastward just a little bit sooner than it is showing now. But anybody within the central to eastern coasts of New Orleans, I would advise to evacuate, especially in the low-lying regions. And around the state line to Mississippi, there could still be very easily some very extreme flood surging going on, even as far as Biloxi. And so we'll just keep an eye on this, because keep in mind that the rapid intensification has not happened yet. It is still going to develop much, much stronger over the next 24 hours just ahead of landfall. And I believe we are probably about 30 hours away from landfall right now. The eye is forming, and there's nothing here to stall it out. So that's good for a couple things, that we won't see the very long-term prolonged rainfall. So things will be over a little faster, but that does mean that those gusts, the heavy, strong, damaging, severe wind gusts, will more likely continue inland longer because the storm is moving faster. So it won't die down as quickly as it would in some cases. And then we do still have this moisture plume over the warmer pocket of water that will feed into this storm and give it some more fuel. And then NORA is over here, bringing even more moisture up from the equator, funneling it over Mexico and then into the Gulf. So I was curious how these would play off one another. I noticed there was a lot of moisture the other day, so flooding and landslides are still just as much of a threat today for Central America, as I had mentioned yesterday, especially around the peaks and where these plumes of moisture develop. This is the infrared satellite, so anywhere with the red is going to be colder, that really dark red, and then sometimes it will even turn white when it's very bright or filled with hail. So in these cases, the red is going to be extreme rainfall. And when that ends up passing over land, do be aware that this is time for landslides, because most of these regions have been drenched repeatedly for the past few weeks. So biggest threats here are water, lightning, and then the high winds within the 50 miles of the storm, plus those extreme wind gusts extending much further, especially around Ida, up to hundreds of miles away. And I will be following a family who's staying in this area. They are on the northern side of Lake Pontchartrain. I hope I'm saying this right. I hear this word all the time and hardly have to use it myself, but I am following people staying in the area in some weatherproof homes. So as this continues moving onward, I will keep you updated with how these homes that are supposed to be weatherproof actually hold up, because right now they're starting to get the rain there, and in the next 24 hours those winds will ramp up to very dangerous speeds. But with certain builds, including dome homes, we have seen them last through the storms. And this is what I would like to share, and I'm making my mission statement that we build better structures to last through these storms, rather than having to evacuate everything and clean up the mess every year. We know these come every year, and this is that time. So hope everybody is okay. Feel free to ask questions if you have any. And make sure, if you're in the area or if your friends are staying in the area, I've heard of some people not wanting to evacuate and having not looked yet at any local shelters who are new to the area in this Gulf Coast. So please, if you have friends around here, just share with them any kind of evacuation information you might be able to find in case things get bad. But there will not be much more chance to leave for many reasons, weather-wise, and also the fact that gasoline is now out in most of that area. So I hope everybody can enjoy the weather and find ways to remain prepared and not scared. This is your weather woman, meteorologist Amy Metz, wishing you the best through these storms. And before I sign off, I'll do one more look at the space weather I mentioned briefly, because we did have a lot going on this last week. There's multiple sunspots, and as far as our 11-year solar cycle goes, we are now reaching a maximum every 22 years. Our sun's magnetic field, which is what we're looking at now in different wavelengths through different filters, it will undergo different magnetic field changes. And so I'm looking for the loop here. Didn't get it yet. But when this magnetic field changes, it produces different kind of weather on the sun. And that weather can sometimes interact with our magnetosphere. There's a magnetic shield around our Earth. And this type of weather can disrupt our GPS communications. Instead of, let's say, maybe emails or text messages sending to somebody, some disruptions, like you'll see a bright flash occur here pretty soon, because I know there was an M-class flare. I believe it was from this active region. I did see it light up. There it was. That's most likely the M-class flare that was produced today. There it was, because there was a couple C's and then the M was bigger. So this, on the day side, wherever the sun is shining, if that happens, those solar flares will blow away the particles that are sending information from a transmitter to a receiver, whether that's radio communication or maybe your text message from a satellite or your geolocation with your GPS on your phone. If that information gets muddled, pushed away, out of the way, off that airwave, you're not receiving it. It looks to people like working in airports as if the planes are no longer there. They cannot find their planes in the air, or perhaps you end up with your GPS malfunctioning and don't know why. So this is one reason. And on top of that, there was some filament eruption. So I will also show you the 304 angstroms, which is the red sun. And From there, we can very clearly see filament rather than that solar flare that I just showed you. And there was a filament channel right in here. I did it again, forgot to select video. This is a new source I'm using straight from NASA rather than the third party I used to access this from. So here, there was a filament eruption and a whole filament channel that is not as visible right now as it was days before, but there has been a lot going off here in with a different type of phenomena. And this particular phenomena can actually hurl plasma toward Earth that interact with the magnetic field rather than just that airwave communication. So on top of those disruptions from the day side with the flares, we'll also have day and night side disruptions from geomagnetic storms that are produced from the magnetic field disturbances. When it changes up high in the sky, that can create geomagnetic induced currents in the ground, which ends up actually shutting down power in some cases. Because we've had extreme events like the 1989 stock exchange, the Toronto Stock Exchange was down for hours and hours and there was no power in that region. Things broke and had to be fixed. Because of those situations, now we know about safe modes and we know how to forecast for this stuff. So there could be some power issues this week and also emergency relief efforts being halted as this storm makes landfall and people are on the ground needing to talk to each other about search and rescue. If there are more flares, we're going to have disruptions with that radio communication. So you're going to need to be messing with different bandwidths. If there are satellite phones you can use or other sources of communication, depending on the flare intensity and the geomagnetic storm intensity, some of the bands will work and some will not. So if you'd like more information about that, please ask me and share whatever you like on those information sources below if you have some of your favorites already. And then here's the official source with the Space Weather Prediction Center that I use for that information. And then I'll just stop at the National Hurricane Center to get the very latest before I sign off here. The other official source for our Earth weather here in the United States. They now show 85 miles per hour at the core with a decreasing pressure. Central pressure now at 984 on Ida. So I'll keep you updated. I'll keep sharing more and more and also information on that Category 5 grade house where I have a friend whose family works in a hospital right here. So she will be staying behind in that home that was built to survive these storms. So I'll let you know how that goes and continue my mission with helping us stay prepared and not scared for these types of events. Enjoy the weather and thank you for watching.